All right, hello and welcome to the GGG Podcast. As always, I'm Paul and I'm joined by my co-host Phil. We got a great show for you today. We're going to talk a little pre-Summer Games Fest, some news, some announcements we already got out of the PlayStation State of Play that was very exciting last week. And I know we missed a week. I had to be away for a personal emergency. Everything's all right. But yeah, I'm excited to get back into the podcast and talk about all the news that I missed. Phil, how have you been while I've been away? Have you gotten up to some gaming in the meantime?
Well, as you know, Paul, it is that wonderful time of year where Jeff Keighley busts down your door, clad in his red and Hawaiian-themed shirt, and he bestows gaming news like some sort of Santa Claus to the rest of us.
Yes.
So in celebration of that, I've been playing some video games. I have played a lot of multiverses in the last week, which I got back into it. It launched and it gave me like all of the beta stuff that I had and gave me a season pass. So I was like, okay, all right. And I've also been playing a lot of Ghost of Tsushima, like kind of getting back into that. And just like every time I sit down to play that, I'm like, oh, here's a fun little thing that can last 20 minutes or I can play for an hour and a half. And I logged back into my Animal Crossing village.
Ooh.
And every single person in the town was like, Phil, it's been 3 years. I thought you were dead. And I felt guilty and turned it off. So that's
really
cute. About where we're at. Yeah.
That's so cute that it does that. Oh my God.
It's pretty good. But yeah, what have you been up to, Paul? Any time to play despite a crazy week?
Yeah, I mean, I really haven't had a lot of time to get into games. Yesterday, though, Sunday was my first day that I was like, oh, okay, I can actually take today to do what I want. So I don't know where this came from, but I kind of got a competitive shooter. Like I just wanted to play a competitive shooter. And as we talked about on our last podcast 2 weeks ago, X Defiant recently came out, which is the free-to-play shooter from Ubisoft. And I actually played a good amount of that game, and I am really enjoying it. And it is far from a finished product, I would say, but it's hard for me to hold a free-to-play game to the standard of other finished products. So, but like, I think it really reminded me of when I was in high school playing the like original Call of Duties, the original Modern Warfare, like that kind of vibe. It feels like the Call of Duty that I was accustomed to back in the day. Where it's like, yeah, there are some abilities and some things that you can do, but it's mostly, it's just, your Twitch shooting
gunplay.
Yeah. And so I've been really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm a little disappointed that there isn't really more content there. So I do think it's a little unfinished. Like there's no ranked mode currently. I mean, they call it like a ranked trial in the game, which is a little, I don't know. It's like, it's like, this is what we're thinking, but we haven't committed to it yet. So there's no ranked modes. And then after you play like the welcome playlist, you realize, oh, this is the entire game. That's all that this game is.
That's all, the whole thing.
Yeah. So, and then because I was playing that, I was like, you know what? I still am in a competitive first person shooter itch. I should go and play the finals, because I haven't played the finals in a while. And so I started playing the finals yesterday again, and I just had a lot of fun with it. And, for me, it's like the finals feels more like a finished product, and it also feels more original in its thinking, where X Defiant is just like, yeah, this is Call of Duty. The finals feels like, we've embraced mechanics and certain things from other games, but how we format the game and the experience is really our own take on what a competitive first-person shooter could be. And so, I'm a big advocate of both of those games. And I think there's a lot of annoying things in the gaming industry nowadays, but one thing that's pretty cool about the modern gaming industry is that like you get good competitive shooters that are free to play games now. And
Yeah.
like if you want to engage with them and buy the battle pass, it's $10. And like I don't mind doing that. I don't mind doing that at all. So I am thankful that I don't have to like buy a full Call of Duty
Yeah.
to get that competitive experience. So
It's kind of, I'm sure we'll talk about Call of Duty a bit more as the show goes on, but I do think it's kind of smart for companies to be like, we know like 3% of people played Call of Duty's story mode.
mhm.
So if we can get something that will get people in the door and then like maybe let them seasonally buy sort of DLC, that's a great way to get people in the door. And we have that game model, and then we also have your big 60, 70 hour games or whatever.
Yeah,
So I kind of like it. We're getting the best of both worlds right now, even if that means we get a little bit less of one or the other depending on the time. But
sure.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right, so moving into our major game releases this week, Destiny 2: The Final Shape is going to be coming out, and it is Destiny's biggest update in quite some time, at least a year. And I believe the servers are down today. That's June 3rd, in preparation for its June 4th launch, which is tomorrow. And so I'm just going to go through some of the patch notes that Destiny has released as far as like new things that they're going to be adding. So obviously we have the story, which is entitled "Journey into the Pale Heart of the Traveler," which was something that is connected to the prior DLC story, where we had a big villain who went into the Traveler, and then we got the classic Destiny additions, which are adding new abilities for the classes and whatnot. And so we have Solar Warlock, Song of Flame, Void Titans, Twilight Arsenal, Arc Hunter, Storm's Edge. You can wield both the light and the darkness, which is again hinting at prior DLCs. There's new prismatic builds for the Hunter, Titan, and Warlock. There's a Final Shape raid. There's new Final Shape dungeons. Something that says the dread will make you sweat, which I don't know what that means, but it sounds a little exciting. There's new exotic weapons, new class items. Yeah, so lots of Destiny content here. If you're still playing Destiny, this is probably an update that you're gonna want to pick up. And you and I have speculated about, is this actually Destiny 2's final update that they're going to do? I don't know. I should hope so, so that they can just move on to the next game. But what do you?
It is the end of a 10-year like saga of storytelling for them, which is something.
Yeah.
As you were reading sort of like the patch notes, Destiny has this really like interesting mid 2000s word salad where it's arc ranger or arc scout, whatever the class is, edge of the storm. And I was like, damn, if I haven't seen that printed on a Monster Energy can at some point in my life, I'm dreaming. It's weird though. All of that does kind of get me excited because I do love the gunplay in Destiny. It is really, really good. It's got good bones. It does also suffer from being, Destiny 1 came out in, what was it, 2012?
Sounds about
It's a long
right.
time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does suffer from being just over like a 10-year game. Even Destiny 2 came out so long ago that it starts to feel kind of like a last gen game just a little bit. So that is an issue. But for those of people who play Destiny, I feel like this is like the big gearing up thing. And they got Nathan Fillion back, who when his character seemed to die previously. Spoilers, but he did not apparently. So that is, I think, a lot of really exciting stuff. And also, they did a really good job of setting up this big bad in. I can't remember what the previous DLC, like big expansion, was called, but he like absolutely just tears apart some Guardians, and then you have to leave and do a whole other thing for a while, and then the game's like, all right, now we're gonna go fight the boss, which is what the final shape is.
Right.
So all of that's pretty exciting, and I gotta agree with you that I'm kind of just more excited to see what they are gonna do next.
Yeah, like again, if you're still playing Destiny 2, you are a committed fan. But I think it's time to move on. And like we're at the point where, I'm grateful that you've put out all these updates, Bungie, but start saving some assets so you can actually start building a new game. That would be good. And I think starting, over as far as all of the systems that have been incorporated into this game, because that's the thing that always overwhelms me when going back to Destiny is like, oh, now I got to collect all of these things for this new thing, and I got to collect all of these things, and I got to progress with, and like I want progression. Everybody likes progression and wants to have a self or that feeling of accomplishing something in a game, but it's a lot, especially when you've taken a break from it and you're coming back. So yeah. But what else we got on the major releases this week, Phil?
Well, I don't know if this would necessarily count as a major release, but it's something that I've heard about and wanted to bring up. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is a sort of a cult classic 80s, early 90s horror movie about these killer clowns from outer space. They are terrifying, and it's like a schlocky, scary movie, but they are aliens that look like clowns. They arrive in these pods made of like cotton candy, and they like kill people in all these gorish, terrible ways. Like one of them does a shadow puppet and turns like a T-Rex, and, like bites someone's head off. So it is an asymmetrical horror game, kind of like Dead by Daylight or Evolve way back in the day.
Yeah.
One team playing as a couple of clowns, one team playing as the survivors. And it's just really, really cool that, like, after RoboCop, we're seeing some things that kind of only exist in like this weird little pocket come into the gaming space. Like gaming is a place where we can celebrate these things.
Right.
So excited to see how that one turns out and see what the buzz is. A lot of the early reviews seem to be giving it around like 7.5, 8. So it's in that like good to great territory. Yeah.
Right on. Sounds pretty interesting. And that comes out Tuesday?
June 4th as well.
June 4th as well. All right, right on. All right, well, some releases, not nothing this week, so that's good. But I'm excited. Or go ahead.
Very importantly, Assassin's Creed Mirage launches on the iOS on June 4th. So if you got an iPhone 15 with one of them new gaming processors, you can pay $60 to play it on a tiny screen.
Wow, yeah, that is the dream.
You're welcome, everyone from Apple.
And Ubisoft. You're both responsible.
Yeah, it's true.
All right. Well, I'm excited to get into the news this week because while I was away, PlayStation State of Play, part of the Summer Games Fest, apparently, started. And so there was a number of announcements from Sony. And the first one we're going to talk about is one I'm particularly excited about. And that is that Astro Bot is going to be getting a sequel. And for those who are unfamiliar, Astrobot is the game, or Astro's Playroom, I believe, is the specific title of the game that ships free on all PlayStation 5s, and just kind of introduce the concept of like all the haptic feedback and the controller and everything. And I actually loved this free game on my PlayStation 5. Like, loved it. And I thought that this was going to be like a 30-minute demo, just show you how things work. And it really isn't. It's like they took the time to actually make, not a big game or anything like that. But if you want to do everything, you're probably looking at, 6 to 8 hours of I want to collect everything.
It's a full experience. Like they built in really clever bosses in just this game that came in free. Really clever mechanics to show you how to use the different controls, like you were saying, but also like there's like a weird climbing sequence. You get a different like weapon. There's all sorts of stuff built into this free game that is so charming and so cute, and also seems to celebrate like everything to do with PlayStation. Like you would encounter Joel and Ellie hiding from like zombie versions of Astrobots.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see that Sony has decided to finally pick up and remove poor Astro from the VR prison that he was held in and put him on the console.
Indeed. And so like the game looks like it's got tons of new mechanics that they're building in, and it's going to be coming out early September. So that's this year. So that's very, very exciting. And I'm honestly, I think that Sony does need to commit to like some more, kiddish icons. And like I know that, in Japan they have like Toro the cat and everything like that, but there's really no like, Mario is obviously Nintendo. I think like Xbox doesn't really play around with kid things too much, so it's it's kind of like Master Chief is their mascot. And then
and don't forget Blink's the Time Sweeper from the original Xbox.
Oh yes, of course. Well, I mean, yeah,
they've been like searching for a way into kids games forever. Like there's that Viva Pinata, Toon Crash Racing. They just gave up.
Yes, they did, and maybe that was for the best for them. But I think Sony's still got Ratchet and Clank, but aside from that, they don't have Crash Bandicoot anymore. They don't have Spyro the Dragon anymore. They don't have more kid friendly like E for Everyone games, and I think like Astro's Playroom was such a good game. I'm just so happy that it's the development team and just the idea as Astro as a character. It's going to be fully realized in their own game, and I will definitely be picking it up. So very excited about that.
I agree with you. I feel like they tried to swing with Knack and Knack 2, and that didn't necessarily land for kids.
Right.
Because Knack is vaguely terrifying looking.
It's also wasn't a good game, really. Like,
also not a great game. Yeah.
No.
They're like, you want to see particle effects? That's all we got in this one.
Yep.
And then Little Big Planet, I think, was their other attempt, but that went from being like he's a blank slate Sackboy to trying to make a game out of him, but it never really quite fit because he is such a blank slate because you're supposed to build on top of it. So they had kind of conflicting messages. Astro Boy, Astro Bot seems like the right fit because it's this thing that kind of came out and everybody loved because we weren't expecting it. So they might have the organic like momentum to make something really cool that can appeal to more generations than the PlayStation kind of currently does.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited for it. I'm always down for new franchises instead of just seeing the same things over and over and over again. So yeah, very, very excited. All right, but let's press on with the State of Play news. So we actually, even though Monster Hunter Wilds was officially announced and we have already seen like a teaser trailer for it, we actually got to see a more in-depth look at Monster Hunter Wilds and some gameplay, which is what we really wanted. Although we did see like some, writing gameplay in the teaser trailer, but it wasn't really a lot. So are you excited for this, given the new footage that they released, Phil?
Yeah, okay, so I never really played Monster Hunter games until Monster Hunter World, and that game kind of enraptured me in a way that even when Monster Hunter Rise came out, like I played it and I was like, this is okay, but it's not quite what I want. Monster Hunter World had this really amazing way of making you feel like you were in the jungles searching for an Anjanath or something like that. Like all of the trying to think like environmental detail was so intricate and so like lived in that it made you feel like you were like part of a nature documentary searching down these monsters. And this game seems to be going for a very similar vibe where there is a lot of like natural weather phenomenon that you'll be encountering that changes your hunts or things that you can do to like slow down a monster while you're running away from it. That's not even to mention all the super cool looking mounts. Like again, the Palico, no, not the dog version of the Palico. What is it?
Or no, sorry, I don't know the dog version of the
Right.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. Because the name's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
But those were fine. But
Yeah.
I kind of want something that can change. Like,
right.
I want to level up my mount and get like a cooler, weird bird thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm extremely excited. It's a bummer that it's 2025, but that's about it for me. I'm just like ready.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think like this is really the sequel to Monster Hunter World that people have wanted. Monster Hunter World still being supported. They're still doing like in-game events and stuff like that. But obviously, as far as like the major updates, they're done. And so I tried to get into Monster Hunter Rise after World, and I could not do it.
Yeah.
It just was not my thing. And I understand that it was a I almost said Wii. It was a Switch game, and so like graphically, it was definitely a step backwards. But yeah, and there were some fun mechanics as far as like the platforming that they incorporated in Rise and whatnot. But I really liked World. That was the Monster Hunter that I really, really enjoyed. So seeing that this looks a lot closer to Monster Hunter World just makes me really excited. And like seeing the new combat and seeing like, oh, you can be mounted and still engage with combat, whether you have a physical weapon or whether you have a gun or something like that. Like that's very exciting, and it gives me like that was always a big thing for me in Monster Hunter World. It's like you're fighting this giant freaking monster, and it's like my character can't run away fast enough, and so incorporating that mount combat I think is going to be tremendous. And also like seeing certain things in the trailer of how like, okay, we need to hunt this monster, but this monster lives in a pack. And so how do you deal with monsters who live in packs? They're not all like these giant, solo stompers through the forest. So yeah, very, very excited. Our following on TikTok loves Monster Hunter, so I'll be posting a lot about it most likely. Is a bummer 2025, but I can make it. We can survive until it comes out.
Let them cook. And more specifically, let the Palicos cook. Give me as many new animations as you can, because those were the backbone of Monster Hunter.
Absolutely. I will be recording every single cooking animation. I'm so excited.
Hey, that would actually be a great like cooking style game, is where you're playing a palette, like how they have like cooking mobile games. Just something a game that's just focused on that would be excellent. Capcom, there you go. There's a freebie.
Palico Chef Mobile, yeah, absolutely. All right, so pressing on, so we got Dynasty Warriors Origins was also announced at the State of Play. Dynasty Warriors is an old game, and I was frankly surprised to see another one. But not surprised that when I was watching the gameplay trailer for this, that it looks exactly the same as it looks for the last, 10, 15 years.
Yep.
But for those who are familiar, Dynasty Warriors is, it's more complicated than this, but kind of broad strokes is a lot of giant battles where you have like armies fighting armies attacking a castle. You have this ginormous map, and you are like one of the strong heroes on the map, and you're helping your forces push or defend and stuff like that. And so like I really like that, because I feel like still to this day video games really haven't been able to capture what it would be like being in a medieval like battle. I think like games like Chivalry 2, which is free to download right now, by the way, for anyone listening, on the Epic Store on PC. Phil, if you don't already own it, you should claim it on the Epic Store. And like you get a sense of that, but it's still 64 players, so it's it's 32 versus 32, and so there is definitely
still a little limited.
Yeah, it's still limited, and like what I would like to see is more of a game that you have 32 versus 32, but then you fill out the rest of the battlefield with bots. To give you more of a grander scale of battle. And so that's what Dynasty Warriors does, is just a lot of bots on the field, and you're fighting a huge amount of troops, and it looks really cool. But again, from everything I've seen and read about Origins, this newest one, it just seems like it's what it's always done. But I don't know. Are you excited all for Dynasty Warriors, or hopeful that they'll change the formula a little bit?
Based on that trailer, it doesn't look like they're changing much. And, the graphics are a little bit better, but what I'm most impressed with is the fact that they were able to create a functioning time machine and go back to 2010 for their naming convention. Dynasty Warriors Origins? What is this? this has happened so many times. There's been so many origins.
Yep.
And the name's not going to matter. We're not going to care about the characters. We just want to hit stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going off on Tecmo a little bit here, but the game design is also from like 2006. So why shouldn't the naming convention be from 2010? Yeah, I'm not excited, and I'm a little bit kind of perplexed as to like, if you're gonna wait this long to recreate Dynasty Warriors, why not actually recreate Dynasty Warriors?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the series needs a new take, and I don't know. It was also a very short trailer, which is kind of unconventional for, I feel like, a lot of Japanese press and publicity, where I think the trailer was like a minute 30, and some of that was like title screens and stuff, and it's just,
that's crazy.
Usually you get the Japanese trailer. I mean, it's not, if we talk about like, Kojima, like you're looking at like a 7-9 minute trailer or something like that.
Yeah.
But they
a nice little short film.
They didn't.
Kojima.
They just didn't really show much. So it's a little disappointing, but it's also, it's not a genre that has a lot of competition. And so I think that they can get away with it. But we'll see. We'll see what reviewers say about this game. Because I am curious, but very skeptical at the same time. So yeah. All right.
There's plenty to have seen in that show, including the Concord announcement. Sorry, Concord.
Yes.
That was a pretty interesting one.
It was.
Paul, what was your take on Concord?
Well, first I saw the cinematic trailer. So they released a lot of footage for this game. So they released a cinematic trailer, and then they had the gameplay trailer at the same time, so you don't have to kind of speculate about what it is. We know what it is. It felt very Guardians of the Galaxy, the cinematic trailer, which I'm okay with, because I'm like, if you're gonna give me a lot of quirky mechanics and quirky things in your game, set it in a quirky universe. Like, that's fine with me, and we don't have to have. I think there's a lot of hero character shooters and competitive games like that are like, we're still kind of setting it in reality, where most of these characters are human beings. And it's like, you don't have to do that all the time. So I'm very curious about it. It is very clearly and blatantly an Overwatch ripoff.
Yeah,
like, to be fair, it is an Overwatch ripoff. So, am I like, wow, this is a new thing? No, it's a competitive hero shooter, and they took the time to design some characters, and they seem quirky and they seem fun, and I'm down. But I guess anything to make that genre of games better, to increase the competitiveness, just kind of what we were talking about with Dynasty Warriors, of like, there's not really a lot of competition in this market with hero shooters. There's a lot of competition with hero shooters in the market. And so if Concord can rival Overwatch and make Overwatch better and make that genre better, I'm all for it. Especially because Blizzard's just kind of given up on Overwatch, especially with, like, I feel like most of the new content now is like, hey, we opened up the toolkit to everyone, and we're just kind of like what Halo's doing, and they're both owned by Microsoft, so it makes sense. But
you guys do it.
Yeah, that's kind of their format. It's like, we don't want to work on this anymore, so we're going to give the community our toolkit so they can make next season. And I think that that's cool, but at the same time, it's lazy. And so it's a blatant ripoff of Overwatch, but I hope it's better. And, I hope it steals the community of Overwatch a little bit, so Overwatch can be like, oh, maybe we should start putting money back into this money machine. So
yeah, between that and Marvel Rivals, we're going to have a year that, granted, like, years after Overwatch launched, we're going to have several games to compete with it finally. And it's weird that it took this long to create sort of third-person MOBAs that there was a couple ones that, like, tried to get in there. I think, like, I can't remember any of their names. But these two seem like they actually have a shot. Like, they have their own aesthetic, and in the case of Marvel Rivals, some pretty great IP to pull from. So yeah, no, I'm excited that this is all kind of like coming together. Maybe the world's ready to play these type of games a little bit more so, and with like more time. And I think hopefully these companies have learned from Microsoft and Blizzard to see like, okay, we need to have like a long plan if
Right.
we're gonna make this type of game. You know?
Right. Yeah, I think the big question for me is what does the game launch with content wise? And I think a big thing is they need to launch with a PvE mode. I think we've learned a lot that if you are doing a more cartoony take on things, or like Star Wars Battlefront learned this the hard way. It's like if you didn't launch with if you're just going competitive and you're trying to target also a casual, not that casual, like the casual market is your target market, but if you're trying to incorporate them into your sales, you need to have a PvE mode where people can just play the game and they can enjoy it without like going super competitive about it. And so launch with a PvE mode, give us more to do than just lane pushing. And hopefully maybe you got a good game there. But don't just rip everything that Overwatch does, rebrand it, and be like, why aren't people playing our game? So yeah.
Well, speaking of mod toolkits, our next story is about everyone's favorite video game darling, Baldur's Gate 3, getting a mod toolkit.
Hell yes.
Yeah, it's that game, again, like most games getting a mod toolkit, like The Witcher, granted The Witcher's, what, at this point, like 7 years old?
Yeah, 2015, I think. 2014, something like that.
Seeing as how old that is, they're like, hey, you can finally go and mess with it. Everybody who wants to has, okay? But Baldur's Gate 3 is, I think, with a mod toolkit, is going to be such an interesting thing. It feels almost like Dungeon Master tools. Like, you can go in and mess with things and create your own story to a degree that, especially in a game that is set so well with, like, in a system. Yeah, I'm excited to see that. That is a pretty big thing. Paul, what's your feelings on it?
I think it's a tremendous idea. I think it's fantastic. They've had great support since Baldur's Gate 3 has come out as far as the updates go. And this is the perfect thing to like end the major updates with, where it's like, we're going to give you the mod toolkit. So, you can go in and futz around and do whatever you want to do with Baldur's Gate. If you are that gung-ho, you want to make a custom, like if you're a DM and you want to make a custom Baldur's Gate like playthrough that like you can dungeon master, or like you have all the systems in there to help you. And I think this is absolutely the best thing for Baldur's Gate in the long run. And giving a mod toolkit this early, I know that the game came out last year, obviously, but it's still a pretty quick turnaround for a toolkit. And so like giving them it this early, it's like there's still interest in the game, and you're dipping into that obviously very Dungeons and Dragons minded market and audience, where it's like you're giving them, I just think this is such a good idea. And like I think we could see custom Baldur's Gate 3 like D&D matches like on Twitch and at your local Dungeons and Dragons hangout or whatever. Really excited. Not something I'm personally gonna probably get into, but something I can definitely respect. So
Yeah, I think it's going to be some really cool tools for people. And again, Larian is such like an upfront gaming company that,
right.
We just talked about how it kind of seems like, okay, when Microsoft does it, but seeing Larian do it, it's like, yeah, but we know you guys are actually working on something else, and it's not just that you're like, we still want to make money,
right? But very, very, very
exciting.
Very cool. I'm excited to see what the community does with it, really. Like, I know that'll it'll take some time, but I have no doubt by the end of this year, we'll get some really, like, quirky stuff. Or, like, I've always wanted to do, like, a D&D game where it's in, like, video game universes. And
That is
so
pretty cool.
being able to drop character models into Baldur's Gate 3 where it's like, you turn the corner and this is Kratos, and over here this is Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. Like that kind of,
My team includes Sonic the Hedgehog and Lara Croft, our rogue. Like, yeah,
yep, exactly,
super
exactly.
cool.
All right. So just kind of a small little update for Hogwarts Legacy. So there's a free update that's coming out this week, I believe, June 6th. And not a lot of content here, but it is free. So anytime Warner Brothers is giving anything away for free, it's worth noting. So yeah, there's going to be a new photo mode that's added to the game, which, usually I'm not very excited for photo modes, but Hogwarts Legacy was a very pretty game.
Yeah.
And, especially for an open world game, and especially like the interior of the Hogwarts castle itself.
Yeah.
So I think like this is a game that definitely needs a photo mode, could make use of a photo mode. There are also other things like for the late game, you can reset your talent points, which is great. There's some new gear. There's a new Onyx Hippogriff, which is that giant horse eagle thing. New brooms, some Prisoner of Azkaban's
Robes.
outfits and whatnot. What's up?
I do think a lot of this was like DLC that like where it was like console specific, with the exception of photo mode. Because I had the Onyx Hippogriff from like a pre-order, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, if you did not get the pre-order, then now you get it for free. So that's good.
That's right. Yeah, there's some cools like the Felix Felix's potion recipe is pretty cool. I think it's like an XP booster. And then there's also a whole new like Hogsmeade shop quest that was only available on PlayStation that is now available to everyone who owns the game.
Awesome.
So pretty cool. Hogwarts Legacy was a game that I enjoyed a lot when I played it. It was just so rich and really felt like being in that universe to a degree that no other game has been able to replicate. So pretty cool. Pretty exciting to see there's just even more stuff happening with it. Hopefully Warner Brothers is cooking up another or something like it,
Absolutely. Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty much it for Hogwarts Legacy. So let's kind of get into, this next news topic is going to kind of dip into our main topic. So we're going to talk about Summer Games Fest, but first, we're going to talk about kind of the transition that E3 seems to be going through now. That of course started, primarily due to the pandemic, where things were just going online and whatnot, and then Nintendo, I believe, like dropped out of E3 even before the pandemic, doing their own thing. And so IGN Live is an event that's going to be happening this weekend along with Summer Games Fest, and I think we're kind of seeing in the gaming industry this transition of where the companies themselves are doing these big press conferences and renting the theaters and making the event and paying all this money up front. And instead of the companies handling it themselves like Microsoft or Sony or Ubisoft, now we're seeing the press take full control over these events, with IGN Live, with Summer Games Fest. And honestly, it reminds me a lot of like sports, and like the NBA finals are starting next week, but the NBA, like, they don't run all the press around the NBA finals. They make sure that the NBA finals happen, but ESPN deals with the NBA finals. So they're the ones who actually run all the broadcasting and do all the press and make it an event that people can participate in from afar. And so I think that's kind of the transition we're seeing here, where the companies are like, we're going to make the games, you guys can do the event. So what do you think about this transition? How do you like the IGN taking over and Geoff Keighley taking over as far as all of this E3 business?
I really like that you hit the G in Geoff Keighley.
Yeah, Geoff Keighley.
Geoff Keighley. I think that we're kind of in a power struggle for the absence that is left by E3, right?
Yeah.
Um, we and I think Jeff Keighley's been the most uh, successful in sort of like recapturing that. And okay, it's summertime. We all wanted to get together. We all wanted to do an E3 type thing.
Right.
IGN, I feel like, is kind of in an awkward spot themselves because I feel like they've kind of transitioned away from being like a very on top of it news site to a little bit more of like a host for personalities and occasional reviews. So they're trying to like find their entertainment vector, and I do feel like with the stuff that they're offering from IGN Live, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this yeah, this seems like a lame like E3 pre-event.
Right. There's not a lot of there's a lot of stuff. Honestly, my biggest problem with IGN in general is that there's a lot of like it's a site for nerdy pop culture, and there's
Hmm.
absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But I think like they made their bread and butter and they got to where they are because of their press around video games and tackling
Hmm.
video games. Like even just doing this podcast when I'm going through gaming websites, looking for references, looking for articles, like I very rarely go to IGN because trying to find any actual gaming news on IGN is a struggle unless for some miraculous reason it's made the front page of IGN. But it's usually sifting through, oh, there's a new deal on this gaming headset, or this person was seen on set in this newest Disney Plus filming of this show, and it's like
Yeah.
that's cool and everything, but that's not why I'm on your website. So
Yeah.
yeah, and that seems to be a lot of what IGN Live is, where it's just like we are nerdy pop culture fanfare, and that's what
Hmm.
we're doing. And
This event feels more like Comic-Con,
yeah, I would
but
agree with that. I would agree with that assessment. Yeah,
it's they're talking about like, oh, we have the cast of what is this the cast of
Borderlands.
Borderlands will be there, and I
Yeah,
think that is probably all big stars, all lovely people. Probably one of the movies that I think even gamers are like, yeah, we don't want this. This looks bad.
yeah. I mean, it's a little silly because it's not just IGN reporting on the Summer Games Fest. It's
Hmm.
IGN's own thing. But at the same time, it's like in IGN's Summer Games Fest, they're going to have an Xbox Games Showcase watch party. And it's like, which is going to be on Summer Games Fest. So it's like you're making
Yeah.
a watch party to cover something that it's already being covered by a different organization.
Yeah.
It would be like I need to watch TNT so they can show me ESPN to show me
Yes.
basketball, and so it feels a little like also like their headliner for IGN Live is Phil Spencer. So
Hmm.
immediately I'm like, oh God,
Red flag.
yes. So I'm sure that there will be some news that comes out of this that they've managed to buy and to have them release on IGN Live instead of Summer Games Fest. But
Hmm.
it just seems a bit silly to me. It just seems like why would you compete at the same time as this thing? Why wouldn't you just do it next week or do it a week prior or something like that?
Yeah. It seems like a weird, like, again, like they're vying for power. And I think Jeff, off the back of the Game Awards being so successful and previous Summer Games Fest being kind of sleeper hits and having like interesting things, that unless IGN comes with some really big surprises and some really interesting breaking news, it is going to feel like a failing attempt to recapture what E3 was. And don't get me wrong, I love E3, but I do feel like E3 has been dying. I've had the great fortune to go to a couple of E3s, and in the two that I went to, I felt that like, oh, the magic of this place is kind of like dying. Like there's people who are paying money to sit in 3 hour long lines to 6 hour long lines to play Kingdom Hearts 3
Right.
for 20 minutes.
Right.
And at that point, it doesn't feel like it's anything interesting. It feels like it is just another profit margin in a more direct way, instead of like showing their investors and showing journalists like, hey, we've got this game cooking, get excited, get people riled up. It was like, you already know that when you show up, you're going to see Assassin's Creed, you're going to see this.
XYZ. Yeah.
Yeah, you know?
So do you think that's because just the amount of leaks that we have in the modern media, where it's like nothing really feels like a surprise anymore because everything is spoiled? And so when, it's like what you said, like we know these games are going to be there because they've been leaked, or because somebody on Twitter posted, a picture, and we know that it's coming, and we know that it's supposed to be released in Q4, and all this other stuff? Or is it just people's patience is less so they don't want to wait in a 3-hour line to play Kingdom Hearts?
I think the main issue is that Nintendo started doing their Treehouse. They started doing their own live stream that was like, hey, we're going to curate exactly what we want you to see. We don't have to do any like live stuff, no dealing with flubs on stage or anything like that.
Right.
And Sony saw that and went like, us too, and now Microsoft has joined on. Devolver Digital puts on such an interesting show that isn't at E3, and it talks about their games, but it's also this weird performance art. So, yeah, I think it's just the fact that companies decide, like, oh, we don't need E3. We can do this on our own. They built on what E3 has done, like the format, but now they are successfully each doing their own thing and curating their message in a more, I don't know, in a way that probably fits them better.
Sure. Okay.
That's my main idea for why it's going away.
Yeah, and it's, again, it's cheaper to make the press pay for it. So
yeah, exactly.
It's like, this is where you guys make your money anyway. Do it yourself. All right. And so with that, let's really get into the Summer Games Fest, kind of moving away from IGN. So there's a number of events that are kind of claimed to be part of the Summer Games Fest. Some are kind of yes, some are kind of no. And the first one, of course, we've been talking about it all episode, was the State of Play, which happened back on the 30th of May. And so that was the kicking off of the Summer Games Fest. I didn't really feel like it, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, but the actual Summer Games Fest itself is going to be starting on June 7th, which I believe is this Saturday, starting at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. So there's also it's going to be live. So it's going to be at the YouTube Theater, I believe here in Los Angeles, where you and I reside, Phil. And it's going to be going from then all the way to, to the 10th, where they are ending with Ubisoft's Forward, which is going to be at 12 p.m. Pacific or 3 p.m. Eastern. So lots of stuff in here. So we got we got the PC Gamer is presenting the PC Gaming Show. We have the Xbox Showcase on June 9th. That's going to be happening. Latin America.
I'm really excited for the Wholesome Direct.
The Wholesome Direct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one my girlfriend's definitely going to be into. But yes, the Wholesome Direct, which is an indie showcase, and it seems it's being marketed as the very cute and cozy gamer, part of the Summer Games Fest. So very, very interesting there. So with all those things going on, are there any particular announcements or any like wish list type things that you kind of want to come out of Summer Games Fest, Phil?
Yeah, well, I'd first like to pitch. We start calling State of Play State of Foreplay because it was so far ahead of the Summer Games Fest.
Oh man, that's the episode title right there.
Yes. But yeah, no, I'm okay. Here's what I'm hoping. The Xbox Showcase, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I think there's a lot of smoke that Microsoft has to get through.
Yeah.
And a lot of bad press that they are currently working against.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what they can do to get around that, I think they have to announce Silksong. They have to give us the heaters that we have been waiting for in some way, shape, or form. The next Fable. I think they have to show that they've continued to be working on things and they're not just like a big bummer studio.
Yeah.
I also expect that like they're gonna lean into their handhelds because Phil Spencer in like almost every interview has not been able to shut up about handheld
Hmm.
something to do with like the future of Xbox being somewhat handheld.
Hmm.
Um, so that's like the big thing that I'm like, okay, Microsoft, like step up. I am kind of upset that we are going to see a whole direct dedicated to Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Um,
Yeah.
that's going to be an easy turn off for me. Just so I thought we're done.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that Call of Duty is just such a big market for them that they're just like, we need to. And I think that, there's a lot of Call of Duty gamers out there who they just play Call of Duty, or they'll
Yeah.
play like Call of Duty and, Madden or 2K or something like that. And that is the extent of gamer that they are. There's nothing wrong with that. But, they're not, a Call of Duty gamer is not going to sit through the entire Summer Games Fest. They're not going to sit through the wholesome direct,
Yeah.
like people like we would. So
Not to be a dingleberry, but I doubt that they'll even sit through the Black Ops 6 direct.
yeah, probably. So yeah, I'd like to see some stuff from Nintendo here, but unfortunately they're not listed in the summer games because I'd like to get some new information on the Switch too. So that would be great, and I'd love some new information on like what's the next Mario going to be, stuff like that. But we're probably not going to get that, or if we do, it'll be Nintendo being like, "Hey, we're going to have a Nintendo Direct. It's going to be in 2 days." Whenever we feel like it. So we just kind of have to play that by ear. But particularly since you were talking about Microsoft, I would really love to see them commit to a Blizzard revamp where they take a good long look at all of their Blizzard games and they're like, are we going to continue to support this game? Or, and not just support it, but update it and keep it moving forward? Or are we just going to continue to spin our wheels by like, oh, this is another season? And so like I didn't mention, but I played a little bit of Diablo's new season. The gear and everything and the grind does feel a little bit better, but obviously Diablo is still kind of a mind numbing game. Kind of one of those games you like put on a podcast while you're like put on our podcast, for instance, and play because you couldn't care less about the dialogue that's going on.
We'll get you through it, guys.
Yeah, we'll get you through a Diablo 4 dungeon. But I would like them to see, it's like I've brought up Heroes of the Storm before. Like, are we going to update Heroes of the Storm, or is this the MOBA you're going to let die? Are you going to make significant changes to Overwatch that aren't these half measures and half steps? Are we going to get another StarCraft game? What's going on with Warcraft? I want you bought Blizzard, do something with it. Don't just sit on your laurels. So that's kind of really what I want to see. I am also looking forward to Ubisoft Forward, which is going to be the last little bit. I was talking about X Defiant at the beginning of this episode. I want to see what their plans for X Defiant are, because I think it's a solid foundation, but the game it needs content, and it does not have content right now. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see them, maybe address Skull and Bones. Maybe Skull and Bones becomes a free-to-play game with some subscription or something like that to try and drive up the population.
Hopefully Assassin's Creed Shadows will get some time, like some gameplay, because I know that's due out later this year. So, despite the fact that we got a hype trailer, it would be cool for them to showcase, like, all right, here's what it's like playing as Yasuke.
Yep.
Giving us what their cities are going to look like and getting us hyped for something that, how they're going to stand out as a samurai / ninja game.
Right. Absolutely.
And then Star Wars Outlaws is also coming out later this year.
Yeah. I think it would be good to see some of that. I'll be honest, everyone was very impressed by the gameplay of that game, and I was not. It felt like a very reductive Uncharted gameplay, which now Uncharted gameplay is kind of old, to be honest. And I love the Uncharted games, but do something with it. Like, are we gonna get some good RPG mechanics in there? Do I get to build and customize a ship? I know that there's factions you interact with, so I'm really, if I'm looking for anything, I'm looking for some new ideas, and not just the tired business as usual announcements, which I'm kind of worried this is gonna be. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on the Summer Games Fest.
Question for you: are there any games that you are thinking that we might see, or anything that you are like excited to see that isn't announced yet? I'm gonna go first with my example, which I believe we're probably gonna see, even though EA is not listed, something from Dragon Age Dreadwolf.
Yeah.
And probably whatever the next Doom is going to be. I've heard some rumors about that. But outside of those are like okay, they're probably going to show us this in some way, shape, or form. Is there anything that you are excited to see or hopeful to see that, like, next iteration of a game or something new?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the first thing that came to my mind is Dune Awakening. This is a game we talked about on the podcast before, but it's a Dune survival game. We don't really know how it's going to work necessarily, and it's a game that I want to see a lot more of. I'm really into survival games, and honestly, I could go for some survival games that are not, like cartoony in their aesthetic and in their gameplay style, and so to see a little bit more of like a hardcore, not hardcore, but medium core sci-fi survival game would be really fun for me.
Survival is such a big part of Dune. Like, you got to see, like, literally you're surviving on a desert planet. There is some fauna that is, or flora and fauna that is ready to kill you. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I would love that, and then I would love StarCraft 3, which is probably not going to happen. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that's come to mind for me. Or what I would also love to see, since we've talked about this a little bit, but Warner Brothers has been dealing the Lord of the Rings video game license out. So I would suspect that there are some Lord of the Rings games that are in production. I don't think that we would get any gameplay at all because it's probably a little bit too early. But I would love to see a Lord of the Rings game come back. I would love to see Battle for Middle-earth 3. That's a game that I've wanted forever, which is Lord of the Rings RTS. Or, there was a game, Lord of the Rings Conquest, which was made by the team who made the original Star Wars Battlefront games. Where it was like that kind of like, this is a battlefield, you choose what kind of soldier you want to spawn as, and you fight in this Lord of the Rings battle. Love to see that. But that stuff's kind of reaching, and I think, as we were discussing earlier, with the amount of spoilers and leaks that we have, I don't really see a lot of secret things that we're gonna get
pop up.
Yeah, and I think that if the Game Awards have showed me anything over the last 3 years, the Game Awards seem to be more of the announcement event for the big games instead of Summer Games Fest. Like at the Game Awards a couple of years ago, like we got Space Marine 2, we got Armored Core, and like big games that nobody knew about, and they were actually able to keep under wraps. And so, yeah, I'm going to keep my excitement and expectations kind of mid for this whole thing. So I would love to be happily surprised, though.
Anything Lord of the Rings, I'm going to count as a win for Paul.
Absolutely.
That's in my book.
I got a map of Middle Earth right above me, right up there. So,
hell yeah. Hell yeah. You know what? I really love the Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor games.
Yeah,
they were like a lot of silly action fun, but that Nemesis system cannot be beat, and for some reason can legally not be replicated.
Yeah,
because it should be in so many games.
it should.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love to see that come back. All right, but we are at time with that. So any last little thoughts you had, Phil, before we wrap things up here?
No, it's I'm excited to see like what this week yields. It's gonna make for a pretty interesting show next week, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the week after. So
Yeah.
yeah, stay tuned, our humble and amazing audience, because we're gonna have so many juicy details fresh from the sweet lips of Jeff Keighley.
Yes, who is the representative of the people nowadays.
Yeah.
Yes, he always has
Oh.
been. But yeah. All right. Well, we're going to end it there. So thank you for listening to the GGG podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast and you're listening to it over on YouTube, we could definitely use a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And if you're listening to the audio only version, you're probably over on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. So please, if you could give us a 5-star review and a follow, that would be amazing as well. You can also find us on TikTok and Twitch and many other social medias. You just type in Golden Glaze Gaming and we should be the first thing that comes up. So thank you, Phil, for joining me again. Sorry that we were off last week, but we will definitely be back to talk all things Summer Games Fest very soon. So all right, peace out, everybody.
It's